everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, that takes us to the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I so move.
Thank you, Ms. Ritter, and a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Adoption of the minutes from January 17th. If anyone has any changes or a motion to adopt them as presented.
I'll make a motion we adopt them as they are, at the present state we're in now.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ritter. All in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That takes us to the first item on the agenda this evening, tourist home special requirements. Would you mind to cue that up for us, please, Michelle?
Thank you. At the October 2nd, 2023 Board of Supervisors meeting, they discussed the possibility of changing the requirements for tourist homes within the Rappahannock County Code, Chapter 170-66K, regarding the additional standards, adding a requirement that the owner require that they hold the property for at least 2 years before or prior to be eligible to apply for a special exception for the tourist home. The Planning Commission and the board had a joint meeting here November 15th, in which it was discussed as well. We have attached a draft ordinance with the extra requirement that the owner own the property 2 years prior to being eligible to apply for the special exception, and this would be only for the tourist homes and not for bed and breakfasts.
Thank you, Michelle. We did advertise properly a public hearing on this matter tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
So without further ado, unless anyone has anything to do beforehand, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this item on the agenda, Tourist Home Special Requirements 170-66K. If you have anything to comment on this agenda item, please come to the microphone and state your name and the district in which you reside and your comments on this item.
Dabney Kirchman, Piedmont District. I don't know where everybody else is. I would like to speak in favor of this or anything else you could possibly do to regulate tourist homes. I think the number of them is really bad for the entire county. And I am very sympathetic to, I need to get some income from my property. I'm broke, I own this, and I can't stay here without the extra income of a tourist home. But the suggestions of you have to be registered to vote in the county, you've owned the property for 2 to 5 years, anything you can do to track the number of tourist homes and limit them, I would like to speak strongly in favor of.
Thank you, Dabney.
Where is everyone else?
Hi, Karen Hunt in Jackson District. I will reiterate support for this. I think we've discussed a lot that we have a problem and we're aware of it, and we need to try to do something to slow the proliferation of some of our smaller and more affordable housing. So anything, I think this is a good start. We'll see how it works and if it makes a dent in maybe some of the speculative investment from outside folks, so that maybe people that actually want to live and contribute to this community can have a chance to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this agenda item?
Good evening. I'm Margaret Bond in Piedmont District. I'd also here to speak in support of the 2-year moratorium on tourist homes, or at least I think you're calling it a holding period. I like the idea that there might be an initial 2-year period so that some of the concerns that we're talking about or considering tonight can really be explored a little bit further. I think there are 2 areas that I am unclear on, but I had a kind of a, you get this feeling when you see more and more of the special exception permit applications coming forward. You say, what is happening to this county? Without statistics, I don't want to try to speculate as to what it is, but I am aware that there are, I think there are 45 different applications for these tourist homes in the last 5 years, according to the information on the docket. There are 2 areas where I think this would be wise for the county to consider, to study, to shape how restrictions might flow into the future, or this should be a permanent restriction. One is, we don't know how it affects property values. If homes are being purchased for the purpose of being turned into a business, such as a tourist home, it has the effect, or can have the effect, of raising property values, because now the home is a more desirable piece of property because it's a business investment, and that flies in the face of the comprehensive plan, which encourages a good inventory of affordable housing for the county. The second concern I have is, and this is sort of a metaphysical, I guess you say, the county has relies upon its volunteers for a lot of services that the county can't afford to provide. And the volunteers come from residents, people who've invested in the county, who live here permanently, or maybe even just come down for the weekend, but are here a lot. Without an inventory, you might say, or a good proportion of the population that is here and invested in the county, we will run short on volunteers for the various services. And there are a lot of volunteer services that all of you here are basically on volunteer basis. When you dilute the population of committed residents by allowing a lot of the inventory of housing to become used for tourist homes, you are also diluting the source of this incredibly important service to the county, which the volunteers provide. So I would encourage that if the Planning Commission does go forward with this resolution, that the time for the first 2 years be used to study, one, property values and its effect on the overall resident population and its effect on the volunteer services. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Is there anyone else that wants to speak on the tourist home special requirements 170-66K? Yes, sir.
Ron Macklin from Jackson District. I've dealt with this, on the BZA for a number of years, and I wonder what the problem is, and what the urgency is, in that most of the homes that we gave out tourist home permits to were homes that they bought as second homes. And they might have a, depending on the property or whatever, they may have a guest house on there, or a apartment over a barn or something like that, that they want to have available when they have gatherings or whatever, and they have family come in or whatever, and they want to be able to use all the beds on the property. But that's not all the time. And so in order to basically, on a second home, you've got expenses and whatever, and recoup those expenses or whatever. And to be a benefit to the county, to rent these properties out is, to bring in tourists, which we are, we tout ourselves as being a tourist area, that to put that's this 2-year restriction on somebody buying a home, I don't see what the advantage is going to be. Because, like I said, when you go through most of the homes that we've issued the permits to, a lot of them are quaint. They're old tenant houses and stuff like that but they don't really lend themselves to full-time residency, particularly in the winter, because a lot of these places, and there's not a big business on tourist homes in the winter here anyways, but to have, to rent it out on a full-time basis, the people in the winter are going to freeze to death because the house is just not insulated or whatever. And yes, you can use it in the summer in the good weather. But I just don't see why why we're moving forward on this, in that we haven't had any, and I know in a lot of cities and stuff like that, the problems are, yes, it's taking away from the affordable housing market, but also there's a lot of police problems with them and stuff like that. We've been very fortunate we haven't had that. So I just don't understand why we're trying to move so quickly forward on this without looking at, number one, the numbers are not that great. And I can tell you because I take care of two properties that are down across the line in Culpeper or whatever, there's not a huge amount of money in it for the homeowners. One of the bigger places I take care of is a 3-bedroom house, and there's an apartment over the garage. And last year, they made $20,000, but their property expenses were $50,000. And they're looking at it. In fact, now it doesn't balance out for them now, and their family situation has changed, and they're looking at selling it. But it's not, like I said, it's not where you make a huge amount of money, and quite honestly, long-term rentals, you probably make more money on. But I just think so. I think we're moving too fast here and need to take a better look at it before we make any kind of final decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? If there's no one else wishing to speak, I'll declare this public hearing closed and look to my fellow commissioners for comments on this matter.
Okay, I'll take a whack at it. Well, the way I look at this is, this ordinance was set up to support agriculture, the farmers. And because if any of you have been in farming or know anything about farming, farmers do not make a whole lot of money, and they need extra money to support, to keep their operations going. And also, it provided them with some support to keep their operations going, but also it provided them with a house that if their parents or their grandparents wanted to come back there, they could stay. Or if their children went off to school and come back, they had a place to stay. So, and I don't see these investors is doing anything to support agriculture in this county. And also, as far as this little bit of tax money that they bring in here, it's very questionable if we don't have a handle on, nobody in this state has a handle on how much, what's the right amount that they turn in. We don't know if they turn in too much or not enough, especially these ones that are run through Airbnbs. We have no control over it. The Airbnb is too large. Nobody in the state, nobody in the country has been able to deal with them. Now, and then as far as this little bit of tax money that they bring in, I don't think that's not a positive for me. Because when these investors come in here and they buy this property, they pay high dollar for it. And the only ones that I see benefit from this is the realtors and the investor. Because the next reassessment comes around, every one of our taxes go up. Doesn't have to be a tax rate increase, but our taxes go up. And if you don't believe it, this last tax assessment, my tax assessment went up $1,700. I don't know, to you, that may be chicken feed or chump money, but it's not to me and a lot of other people in this county. So I actually think that this holding should be a lot longer than 2 years. Now, let's go back to what we've been dealing with. These other people that have played the game right, it was 21 of them. They had an average holding of 28.9 years. Then we got 18 of these 2-year investors with only been in here 2 years. They're not vested in the county. So I don't see, and they are very wealthy people. I don't see them, I don't think we need to give them a break.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
I like the 2-year deal, I really do, and as Mr. Barnes said, it gives us an opportunity to evaluate in that 2 years whether we need to extend it or we can address that at that time. Mr. Henry points out that, you know, the market's gonna take care of a lot of things, and it is. I mean, and that 2 years, I think, is an ample time to give some overall perspective of not just, you know, the market's high, the market's low, and interest rates are high, interest rates low, whatever. It gives you more of a sustained period to look at it. I like the 2 years. I wouldn't be against something longer, but 2 years, it's not dissuading anyone from buying the house. It's just saying you can't do it for 2 years. I like it.
Thank you. Ms. Ritter?
Okay, I'm in agreement with the two Tommies. And I'd like to just add that 2 years is not a long time. And for the people that are farming, who may need the income, most of them have been here 2 years. They've probably been here way more than 2 years, so.
They are those ones that average 28.9 years
Yeah.
being here as holders.
And the burden of not being able to use it as an Airbnb doesn't seem to me that heavy. They can always rent it to people who really need rental property in this county. And so it benefits us in 2 ways, which is the people who we would like to have benefit from the tourist homes will do so under this provision. The people who want to come in, buy a house, and turn it over right away will be discouraged, and we may get some more rental properties.
Thank you, Ms. Ritter. Mr. Schulman?
I think an important piece of information that's missing from this little chart is the values of those properties and what they were purchased for. It seems like we're trying to, it just kind of, the affordable housing thing just kind of keeps creeping up in this conversation, and I'm not seeing it. I see plenty of opportunities. I drive past a couple on the way home or to work from Chester Gap. They're still on the market. Those are affordable houses. I'm not opposed to the 2-year thing. I think it would give us, and people, it would give us, it would give the community an opportunity to see if there actually is an effect on affordable housing in the county. Or if it has no effect whatsoever, then it can be removed, or if it does, then we can extend it one way or the other. But I'm kind of ambivalent to the idea. Personally, I'm a kind of property rights kind of guy, but I'd be happy with 2 years. It's not, like you said, that's not long.
Yeah.
I'd rather see family subdivisions be held for 10 years before they're sold instead of 2.
Thank you, Brian. You care to speak or?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I guess there's maybe 2 things that haven't been said. I feel like some of the comments suggest that by having this 2-year ownership delay, we're going to somehow see a slowdown in the applications. I doubt if that's going to be the case, because for the reasons that have already been cited. Most of the applications that come in are from people who've owned the property for more than 2 years. So I want to make sure people don't somehow misunderstand this. This would only affect people buying property, going forward. But that to me is where the real value is. And I don't think we have this problem now, but the potential problem that I really think this avoids is the scenario of an ill-advised investor coming in, buying undeveloped land and somehow building it to be a tourist home rather than an actual home that someone can live in. And to me, we started to see some potential for things like that to happen. I don't think we've seen any build to be, well, there have been a few, but they've been long-term. But I think that's more of a risk from an outside investor who really is new to the area. And, you know, I think in putting this requirement in, we're protecting ourselves and protecting that person, investor, potentially from a mistake, because we certainly don't want to start seeing properties that, for whatever reason, are designed to work for tourist home purposes, but from their location or their orientation or how they're set up, don't work well for, long-term housing. So I support it. Having thought more about it from the last meeting, and also seeing what the town of Washington has put forward, which is actually a longer one, I guess I'm happy with 2 years. That's what we advertised, but I actually also wouldn't be opposed to seeing it be longer. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Light. Shannon?
I don't understand what this has to do with farmland at all. I don't see where this is going to save 1 acre of farmland. These houses that are being purchased, we're saying houses are being purchased for B&Bs. They're already there. I don't see 1 acre of farmland being saved by doing this. If you want to do this and you want to save farmland, then expand the ordinance to say that anybody that buys property, period, in Rappahannock County cannot either do an Airbnb or can they build a house on their land for 2 years. If you want to save farmland, do that. Really save farmland if you put a 2-year restriction on it. So then people won't come in here and buy farmland and build $1 million houses and change the character of the county. We looked at these units. This popped up a year or two or so ago, and we looked at how many units there were, and I think at that time the Commissioner of Revenue said it was 33 of them, and about half of them had went inactive. And I had talked to the board then about we should have a tax application fee on these people that they would have to pay every year to maintain their status as an Airbnb, so that we could monitor them and know what was going on. And I think some of these people started the B&Bs and then it was too much work, not enough business, for whatever reason, they quit. But they're still listed as one. I know Shenandoah County, where I have interest in, they charge a fee over there that they did a study, and it's the annual permitting fee is the average of 1 night's rental in the county, and I think that was like $220. So they monitor what's going on and actually how many stay in the business. We don't have anything like that, and we don't, I guess, don't want to do it because the Board of Supervisors didn't consider it. So I think we should expand it to all the land. If you want to really save farmland and really means something in the ordinance, then do something like that. And affordable housing, we talk about affordable housing. You know, on one hand we talk about it, on the other hand we don't want it. You know, a couple years ago when Peoples wanted to come up to Sperryville, buy the old Emporium up there on the right-hand side before we get to the park. Oh my God, it was all these people that came out and said, we don't want these kind of people in the county. We don't want the people in the county that need affordable housing. And we would talk about affordable housing for the same people, teachers and firefighters and public employees, But the outcry was, we don't want these people in our county. So I couldn't believe it, but that's it is. Comprehensive plan talks about affordable housing. And that's all it does is talk. You know, when somebody comes around a village to try to do something, they get denied. When the development here behind the old copper kettle down here behind the post office, you know, when they came out and they talked about 20 affordable housing units, you know, that was outrageous. You know, and I think the county in their dealings with the town put in their negotiations no more housing units. Well, somebody was willing to do it, no tax dollars involved, no county contributions, but we said no more. So, you know, we say one thing, one page, and do something else on another. The comprehensive plan promotes agritourism, bringing people to the county, get their money for a day or two, and then send them home. Well, people come out to the breweries or wineries, to events, have a good time, come out to our restaurants that charge between $100 and $300 a plate, drink the $100 bottles of wine, and then now we're saying, let's put them in a car and send them back to wherever they came from. Well, if these people want to have these B&Bs out here and they are successful, then I guess our tourism policy was successful, but now we're saying, you know what, we're putting a lid on it. So we're not going to grow our tourism like we thought we would. So, so then we got to think about where the tax dollars are going to come from in the future. So I guess we got to go back to $1 million houses being built. So it's this dichotomy of what do we want to do? We're supposed to be a planning commission, we're supposed to be farsighted, but this thing here, it does nothing to solve any of the problems that, that we deal with. It's kind of the same thing we did with the solar field ordinance. We did that solar ordinance that was outrageous. It was outrageous. It's probably on the verge of being, illegal. Probably there's 1 or 2 properties in all of Rappahannock County that could support a field according to this ordinance. And we just thought basically we're going to put this ordinance on record. We're going to come back some other time and modify it. But once it went on record, nothing was ever said about it again. So I was talking with a gentleman this week, and we keep on putting these barriers to ownership, barriers to doing things in the county, and nobody wants the county to change. Everybody wants it to stay the same, but we don't have any commercial zoning in the county really that can be used. We don't have really any affordable housing areas. Sooner or later, somebody's going to come in and say, you've kind of been discriminatory against all these things. So this is just another little chip that goes into that puzzle that somebody's going to use one day, whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now. That's when we lose the ship, and we keep on tightening these things up like this. But, I'm going to vote for it. Everybody else wants it. I'm not going to go against the tide. But, it's kind of like, it's kind of like the Republican Party having a trial of the Homeland Security guy. He was doing his job. Nobody liked it. But they're going to make a statement and impeach him and have a trial. It makes no sense. But it's okay. So that's my feelings on it.
Well, I kind of agree with a lot of what's been said tonight, and, this is a standalone issue that came from the Board of Supervisors as a suggestion from one of my peers on that board. And I have to say, if we want this to be used to save agricultural properties, then we should tie it to agricultural zoning. If we don't want it in residential areas, we should not allow Airbnbs in certain zoning districts. I just think that this is a Band-Aid and a big experiment. And while I certainly agree with the sentiment and know that there's not just a local issue with affordable housing, but a national issue with affordable housing, I don't know that this is the right answer. I don't believe it is. And when I look at the listing of places that we've approved, I kind of wonder why I would have voted differently on any of those other than the issue of how long they've owned the home. But I don't think we get very many, if any, complaints on our rentals. So, I certainly sympathize with the sentiment, but I just think maybe we've put the cart before the horse, and that we've not tied it to the right factor. Maybe the 2-year ownership. What if somebody saw a property come open to buy that adjoined their family property and they wanted it, but they weren't in a position to move right in?
Buy it for their kid later.
Yeah, and maybe they need more money than they can make renting it month to month, but the Airbnb would pay the bills. So I certainly agree with the sentiment and know that the county does struggle with affordable housing, but I'm just not sure that this is the cure for that ill.
Honestly, I'm not sure. quite sure it's not the cure for affordable housing. I do think it'll lend to the rental stock. It's really hard to find a place to rent in this county. And a lot of these places were full-time rental houses, and they got turned into Airbnb. So I agree, I also agree with Al's point about, if we're talking about affordable housing, why didn't we encourage it at the Black Kettle Commons or Rush River Commons? It's just, that was a perfect scenario. And I also think this may not help with the affordable housing. I think it will help some with rental housing, and I think it'll discourage developers from buying property, building it, and turning them into Airbnbs, which, that's probably not what we want to encourage. That kind of investment. And I think the people who, for instance, are farming and do need extra income can do the Airbnb. So we're not really foreclosing much.
We, 2 or 3 years ago, we did a B&B for Mr. Jenkins down at Jenkins Orchards off of 231. And he bought the 50-acre farm next to him. And the key part of that was that he was going to rent the house out there that had been and people that owned that were DC residents, and they came out there occasionally. So he was taking a part-time occupied house and using it for Airbnb, and that was part of his decision to buy that property. And I was so delighted when that application came through, because it was somebody that had been in this county for generations. And here they had an opportunity to increase the land holdings, and they were working their property, making, food from it. And they found a way to buy the property next door, and this contributed to their decision to do it. So, this thing can cut both ways, but I don't think this is going to make any change whatsoever in the availability of housing. Anybody that thinks that this is going to increase the pool of rentals is fooling themselves. It's not true. These houses that sell for $300,000 or $400,000 or more that go into B&Bs, at today's rate of 7%, that nobody's going to do that. Have a $2,000 or $3,000 a month mortgage payment and think they're going to have any success with a B&B. It's not true. And plus, a $2,000 a month payment is not affordable housing. So,
Right.
But I want somebody to explain to me simply how this saves farmland. I haven't seen anybody buy land and build houses on it for Airbnb. We're talking about something that hasn't happened. So, but, this is a political driven. It sounds good. It sounds really good to people, so we're going to pass it. So, that's the way it is. And if you really want to do something about affordable housing, what we should be looking at doing is, with what's being talked about accessory dwellings, we should change our ordinance and basically say that everybody that has a 50-acre or larger parcel gets one accessory dwelling per 50 acres on their property. And that doesn't go against the residential units allowed to be on their property. So that way, if somebody has a large piece of land, they got 100 acres, they can have 2 accessory dwellings. On a big piece of land, they're incorporated in the land. They provide housing for people, and that's the way we should look at doing it. Some affordable housing is scattered across the county on large parcels. We see properties that come in and are around that have 400 or 500 acres, and there's 5 or 6 houses on them. That's good, and if we want to try to do something, that's the avenue that we should do, and not penalize. If somebody builds a house, that's the one residential unit with 25 acres. We need to take these accessory dwellings out of that calculation and do something like that if we really truly want to address affordable housing in this county. So, we talk about affordable housing too. There's tons of money available from HUD to state, everybody. And has the county ever talked about getting even $1,000 to work towards some type of affordable housing? No. So This, you know, affordable housing is another good feeling word, just like let's save the farmland. You know, it sounds good, but, you know, that's all it does in county.
Yes, Mr. Atkins.
And what's one more thing, one ironic thing is that Rappahannock County is still a food desert. One of the most wealthy counties in the state, and it's a food desert. And a food desert is defined as a locality where somebody on SNAP, food stamps, you know, cannot use their benefits. So it's kind of amazing that, you know, we hold ourselves out to what we are, but we can't feed our people here in the county. They have to go outside of the county to get food. So think about that.
Okay, I don't think that we're all on the same page as what is affordable housing. I don't think it's anybody at this table or in this room can determine what is affordable housing. None of us are professional builders. None of us are no professional engineers as far as I know. So we cannot sit here and say that a developer cannot build an affordable house in this county. Now, we're talking about we need housing for people, our school teachers, our deputies, our law enforcement, our volunteer fire department. These people need a chance. They need an opportunity. Like a lot of us was given an opportunity years ago. I, for one, poor boy, born into a family that we had to be totally conservative in order to survive. But I had an opportunity. We had board of supervisors that didn't step on us. They supported and gave us an opportunity. And that's all I needed was an opportunity. And now I have a little piece of land and I have a house in Rappahannock County. That was my dream. I was born here in Rappahannock County. Now, we sit around here and we can BS, but none of us are professionals, and we need to meet in another forum to get down to the real brass tacks of dealing with this affordable housing.
May I? I think we've established that this minor change to the tourist home ordinance doesn't solve many of our big problems.
I agree with that.
But I also don't know what, I mean, this is the action before us. We had a hearing. I think, I'm not sure what we're gaining by continuing to talk about all the things that this doesn't do. I'd like to make a motion that we pass the ordinance as proposed in the interest of potentially slowing down the pace of speculation in tourist homes.
I'll second.
Well, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I don't think it's long enough.
So you're opposed, Tommy? Are you in favor of it or are you opposed?
I'm opposed to it
Okay.
because it's not, the 2 years are not long enough. So I'm opposed to it, yes.
All right. I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
Okay.
Thank you for restating that for me. All right, so that dispenses with the tourist home special requirements and takes us on to the zoning and subdivision ordinance amendment recommendation. Ms. Summers, would you mind to walk us through that, please?
Thank you. Again, this has been advertised for public hearing for tonight. Back in 2000, the code was modified regarding the family divisions in the subdivision ordinance and the zoning ordinance. However, one of the codes was not updated to match the other, so right now they are currently different. What we're recommending to do with this ordinance amendment is change within the zoning ordinance that it be removed, that whole section be removed, and the words added that a family transfer is exempt from the density limitations, provided it meets the requirements, and then refer folks back to the subdivision ordinance just to keep it nice and clean.
Thank you for summarizing that. Do any of the commission members have questions or comments on that before we open the public hearing? Hearing none, I will go ahead and open the public hearing on the zoning and subdivision ordinance amendment recommendation 147-36B. 1D, and 170-40.A4. Public hearing is open. Anyone wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
Ron Mackler, Jackson District. Again, what's the urgency? We're in the process of rewriting the codes. Why is this item all of a sudden risen to the top and has to be dealt with now? Why isn't it just going to be incorporated in the rewriting of the codes? Because it's going to be, actually it could get confusing for the Wiley group that's doing a lot of the work, and that you're making a change here now, and they may have dealt with this in their work that they've already done, and now you're throwing in a change. I just don't see what's the purpose of making this change right now, and that just incorporated into the new code. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, hearing no other comments, we'll go ahead and declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners, do you have any thoughts on this?
I'll just say I think it's sort of a good point about, we got bigger things, but, I think there's also something to be said for fixing small things when they're brought to our attention. This is clearly internally contradictory. I don't think there's much risk that we're going to confuse ourselves later by fixing this disconnect. And I think if you go back and look at the record of the supervisors meeting, this was kind of a parting request, and if for no other reason but to honor that, I think we should just move forward. And again, I'll preempt maybe some conversations. I don't think this is really going to solve any major problems in the county, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Thank you.
I mean, I would agree, and just to say, as a supervisor, this is a housekeeping item more than anything else. We know it needs to be done, so let's go ahead and do it. I have full faith that our staff will be able to keep the Berkeley group on task with the other changes in the midst of correcting this. Anyone else?
The other thing is this zoning ordinance, it just, if I'm an ordinary person reading it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it's, so I'm going to go back to find out if the parcel represents a single holding from a parcel of record in 1962 in order to see if I can do the family division. It's so much simpler just to say no more than one such family division shall be allowed to each lot, parcel, or tract of land in any one calendar year, rather than all the language from the zoning ordinance, which I think is both confusing and...
We're not changing 62.
We're changing,
Huh?
we're changing 147.
We're still maintaining 1962 as the date where family division rights are determined.
Well, then I think we should rewrite it. No,
The proposal is to eliminate
exempt the
redundant language.
density limits.
Yeah, I think we're dealing with the language that's largely repeated, but inconsistently repeated. We're not making any substantive change by this change. We are simply getting rid of the conflicting language and having the treatment of family subdivisions as they pertain to density, or has density considerations pertain to family subdivisions, to be only addressed one place in the regulation. So,
Right.
we haven't really talked about, I know there's been some discussion on the broader question of, what's fair about family subdivisions. Unfortunately, if you're talking about something about subdivisions, there has to be some kind of time delay, because once you divide it, tomorrow it's divided. And so now you face the question over again. So I don't think we're prepared to go into that at this stage, but sounds like maybe we just need to reiterate what we're actually doing here, which is simply limiting the language to one part of the code and taking it out of two.
Any other comments? Is there a motion in regards to this ordinance amendment?
I'll move that we propose passage of the revision as publicized.
Thank you, Mr. Light. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. That takes us through our public hearings into public comment. If anyone would like to speak to the commission, please come to the microphone and address your comments to us with your name and the district in which you reside.
My name is Karen Hunt. I'm in Jackson District. I want to express again that this zoning ordinance complete revision, overhaul, and reorganization is a massive, massive undertaking. Our zoning ordinance is incredibly important to protecting this county as generations have before us. I'm pretty good with details, and I have to say, this is incredibly difficult and complex. There's a whole mix of different goals trying to be accomplished, and we are mixing them all together here. People care about this. How many people have the bandwidth to give such an important task the time and attention it merits? To look at this in depth with the degree of concern that it deserves. I'm trying, and every time I try to get an in-depth complete review, there's a new revision. We are mixing up code changes with substantive changes, with a reorganization that makes it difficult, extremely difficult, to absorb and understand. I feel like it's that game on the street where you've got the cups and they put a ball under and then they mix them all around real quick and say, which cup is it under? And ask you to guess where the ball is. There are so many moving parts here. Something this important should not be this hard to follow. Berkeley Group is an outside entity that is sort of trying to make an ordinance follow some outline that's better suited for Fairfax or Loudoun or Prince William. This is not who we are as a county. We don't want to be that. This process does not inspire trust and confidence with the public when people cannot clearly follow and understand what is being changed and why. I'm asking again, please, do not mix apples and oranges. If we need to do state code updates, do that in a format that mirrors what our current ordinance looks like so people can follow it. Then, if you want to reorganize, do that next. If there are substantive changes being proposed, and there are, then do that separately. I'm asking you to take a step back and look at what this has morphed into. Please. The public must be able to understand what is being done, and most importantly, why it's needed. Complying with state code, people can accept, but that needs to be done as a separate standalone document without mixing other changes we may not want or need, while completely reorganizing the structure. It is too much at one time for the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? That takes us on to Berkeley Group discussion, which it looks like we've gotten back more work from the group, and I was going to ask Mr. Curry if he was available to join us next month. Does it look like we'll have a lot of applications next month in the summers?
I believe you only have one.
Okay. So it may be a good time to have a work session
and get through some of those edits. Any other thoughts?
Did you actually close the public comment period?
Oh, I'm sorry. If I didn't, let me go ahead and close the public comment period. Thank
sure
you. I
that matters.
appreciate, I always appreciate another set of ears, Gary. So if there's no further discussion on the Berkeley group.
Well, I might just, sorry, you were gonna say something? You know, I've heard, and I'm sympathetic to the multiple forms of changes happening simultaneously. And, you know, but I am also, it's hard to imagine going through 3 sets of these processes just to get to where this language is, because I'm growing increasingly comfortable that while there are substantive changes, they are substantive changes to process that, you know, I think if we continue to, you know, ourselves and with members, diligent members of the public, kind of looking at this and trying to, you know, stress test it, find challenges with it, you know, I think that's still a better path than trying to do individual changes. Now, it may be worth speaking to the Berkeley group, and maybe first to Mr. Curry, about whether we could possibly revise the drafting to the point raised, maybe, and I know maybe you can't unstir the pot at this point, but it might be good to see a version that just had the legal changes made and a separate version that then reorganized it, and then a separate version that had it. I don't know if that would be feasible, but I'm more inclined to kind of think in that direction than to try to break this down into 3 rounds of hearings and drafting exercises. So I just wanted to share that thought.
Thank you.
It does seem to me that our priority should be to get the code in compliance with the Virginia State Code, and that might be the most expedient way to at least start. I know we're in the process now, but it does seem to me that we should be in compliance if we're not, and that should be a priority.
As well as I can recall, at the planning commission, I don't think that we gave them instructions, the Berkeley group, the instructions that they've gone off and doing what they're doing now. I recall myself saying, it's not broken. It don't need to be reinvented. It may need a shot of grease. But, and I believe someone else, they're taking the lead from someone else and delivering all of this at one time like this.
I do think there were things like the site plan that we discussed quite a bit and wanted to make some changes like that, and definitely refine some points, but I do understand the hesitancy when I think that we were trying not to make many changes, and then I see how many changes that have been made. And that's why I was thinking a work session might be in order, so that everyone
I agree.
could work through it and understand where all the pieces are, especially since I think I read that you know, we may be in a position where we're tracking changes not as clearly. And I don't know where I thought I read that. The drafts are progressing and probably getting to a point where they need to be reviewed, clear of track changes, so changes made after this set are more easily discerned. So I do think we're at a good point for a full review to make sure we have a level of comfort with these changes before we move forward. Any other thoughts? No new business this evening?
A question.
Yes, sir.
So when are we gonna address the sign ordinance again?
It's still with the Board of Supervisors. It's not been referred back to us. And I wonder the same, because in my mind, it's done.
What are they doing with it?
I don't know. I mean, we've completed our work, and the board's heard feedback on it, and seems to have set it aside. I'm not sure to what end.
It would be nice to complete that project too,
I agree.
because, we have other things coming up. We're in this review of the zoning ordinance now, and it took us forever to do the comp plan.
Yeah,
And when we were doing the comp plan, we basically told the public that 5 years in, we would, kind of do a session, a review and this kind of thing. And
right.
feels like 5 years, I'm not sure.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I was just reading a down memory lane in the Rappahannock News this morning, and it was a quote from Dr. Krebser from the Planning Commission back in the day when he was on the Planning Commission, that said, we are now 3.5 years out from the last time we undertook the comprehensive plan. It is time once again to renew our review of the comprehensive plan and get ready for that. So it's very timely that you say that, and I agree 100% about the sign ordinance, because that all came up. That was the last public meeting we had without COVID restrictions as a county. We talked about the sign issue. So that's 2020, March of 2020 that all started, and here we are in 2024. So I agree, it's time to put some of these things to bed. I'd like to get this ordinance revision done in a timely fashion so we can start back with the comprehensive plan next year. It'll be due.
That's 5 years next year, or is that?
Well,
that's not the 2
we
years.
adopted it in December of 2020 is when the board adopted it. So December of 2025 will be 5 years. So, I mean, these things do run on a schedule, and so it is important to be timely with them and mindful. I didn't mean to interrupt you
No.
if you weren't done talking,
No, that's
Mr.
fine.
Henry.
Yeah, that's fine.
But you're correct. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Is this roundtable discussion?
Yes, sir, it sure can be.
Oh, when Ms. Ritter begins her work on the rewriting of the family subdivision ordinance, I'd like her to include 10 years instead of 2.
That sounds good to me.
We can flip it.
How many? 10.
Which is also not a very long time.
What was
For
this?
some of us.
What was this? 10 years, 10 years of what?
Holding period to sell your family subdivision.
Anything else for roundtable discussion?
I'll remember that.
The biggest development coming in 2024 is because of a family division that created 5 lots, and nobody sold their lots, and they kept them, they sold them to a builder. So the biggest development is coming from a family division situation in 24. So family division is providing affordable housing to the next non-related generations. So that's something interesting to know about.
It's true, but it's also a way to, get around the zoning.
So, yeah, you got around the zoning, plus they sold the lots, and then when the developer went to use a lot, he got hit with DEQ regulations on stormwater that was never known. So, yeah, it was a great way to circumvent the ordinance, not only of the county, but of the state, but was picked up when they applied for a building permit. So that's an interesting scenario right there. Everybody's laughing. What's everybody laughing for?
I'm not,
Happened in your district.
I'm not laughing.
Anything else? All right. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
That